All right, all right. Oh boy, right in the sun. It looks like. Have to make a move here soon to get out of the sun. I won't bother you all with that just yet. So, as you can see, I'm outside here making do here with some Mondays with Mark. I think besides the gospel writer, we might have friend of the show, Mark Davis, has dropped by as well. We are going to look at a very short text, really, from the Gospel of Mark at the end of chapter 6. Jesus walking on the water. Get some, I don't know if there were ducks there at that time as well, but Jesus walks on the water. I'm going to read from Joel Marcus's Anchor Bible commentary. I think he does a good job of highlighting a couple points in here, which might be of interest later on. So here we go. Jesus walks on the sea. Mark 6:45 through 52. And immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, toward Bethsaida, while he himself sent the crowd away. And having dismissed them, he went away to the mountain to pray. And when evening had come, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he alone was on the land. And seeing them making tortuous progress in their rowing, for the wind was against them, at around the fourth watch of the night, he came toward them, walking on the sea, and intended to pass them. But they, seeing him walking on the sea, thought he was a ghost, and they cried out, for they all saw him and were disturbed. But he immediately spoke with them and said to them, "Be brave, I am here, do not be afraid." And he came up to them into the boat, and the wind died down, and they were greatly amazed within themselves, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their heart was hardened. Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in there, and of course, with any miracle story, we have just the kind of incredulity of our times to go along with it. But I think that there are some interesting things to bring up in here. First of all, Mark has a way. Oh boy, sorry about all the background noise. That's okay. Of kind of repeating some stories or telling them again, telling scenes again, which this is rough. Telling scenes again, which are similar but not quite the same. Okay. So if you remember back before, back in chapter 4, there was another crossing of the sea to get to the other side, where Jesus calms the storm there. Jesus is in the boat in that scene, and is asleep when the storm comes up. And here he sends the disciples ahead, and there's a storm that comes up at that point. There's a lot of similarities in the stories, and the differences then become even more highlighted as well, as when they get repeated in that way. But we should note that this is, again, they're leaving and going to the other side. Each time the storm seems to raise up, it seems to be in a response almost to this crossing over to Gentile territory. They're going into Gentile territory, and the storm comes up and troubles them, and perhaps maybe troubles the disciples the most, worried about this going into to be with the other. I think what I see Mark's over there. Let me. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Darren, how you doing today?
I'm all right. You're a little bit
Let's see. Let me see if I can get this camera thing.
Yeah.
This camera thing straight here.
All right. I'm gonna I think
That's a little bit better, I think.
yeah, I'm gonna drop mine for a second so I can shift position so I'm not looking straight into the sun. So I'll
Okay.
still be talking, but
Okay.
you won't see me. But
Like it's warm where you're at.
all right. Did I drop my audio too at the same time?
Yeah, it did.
Oh,
Yeah,
well.
yeah. It's back now.
Oh well, I tried, you know.
So are you in a better position?
At least as far as the sun is concerned. Now, if the
Okay.
dogs start barking again and the ducks fly over, I don't think there's nothing I can do to stop that. But
Okay.
here we are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, try not to.
So you just pretty much get started here.
Try not to make my neighbor be on the live stream, which she doesn't want to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Yeah, I was last week. I kind of stayed at church for a minute and just did it from there. But there's not a lot of place in my apartment here to do the live.
Okay.
We'll have to get when I get into a house for good. We'll hopefully we'll find a nice spot to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how's your week been?
Pretty good. Not too much going on. Still working from home.
Yeah.
In my fourth week of coming up tomorrow on this womanist class I'm taking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting.
Now is that? Is that with who's that with? Is it at Union or is it at?
Yeah, Union UPS. Yeah.
So with
to the Katie Buchanan Institute.
Yeah, Melanie, right? Melanie, is that her name?
Her name is you would think of Michelle Watkins.
Oh, okay.
Michelle Watkins. Yeah, I think she's out of California, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So I heard some of your comments here. You're like comparing and contrasting the two stories, Mark 4 and Mark 6.
Yeah. Because I think it's well, it comes down to as well. I think that there's this. The main thing I think is that there's the two things about them crossing over to the other side.
Yeah.
Which is I think some commentators take it metaphorically to talk about, the difficulty that Mark's community was having of, continuing to reach out across, religious divides, across all these other divides. And so, that, well, I mean, we don't have to look too far for examples of this. Whenever you are called to step out of your place of comfort and be with other people that you're not normally around, usually there's all kinds of storms kick up. Usually within people's own, people within their own community think of all the good reasons why they shouldn't do it. It's not necessarily the disagreements and storms between the two groups. I mean, there's that too. But
a lot of it could be internal. I mean, the storms, if you want to look at the metaphorical aspect, storm could represent the chaos within the market community that should we even be bothered to reach out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as someone who spends a lot of their time in the white church, I mean, we've come up with every good reason to to not get too involved in in other communities, you know.
Yeah. I think, and I mean, there are some, there's some resistance in some Black congregations too about reaching out, even reaching across Caroline, certainly reaching across um, traditional sexual lines.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
still a major challenge in the Black church of accepting those who are not like us in terms of their sexual identity.
Right.
That is still a major issue.
Well, and I think, you know, there's a difficult side to it too, where there is there's a legitimate reason at times, you know, for not wanting to so easily reach out. I mean, obviously, if you take, you know, if you're going from, if you're in the Black church, I mean, part of the reason why historically you're there is because, you know, after slavery was over, the white people didn't want you in their church anyway. So you formed your own thing, and now to pretend like you can just so easily be integrated back into something that grew separately from you and houses a bunch of people who, in the day-to-day world, are somewhat hostile to you.
Right.
There's trust. I mean, it's a, you know, it's a real thing.
There are trust issues. I mean, there's the trauma of dealing with the pain that what you dealt with that creates trust issues. I mean,
When I think about, go ahead.
In the marketing community, we know that this is still a sect within. This is still a part of Judaism.
Right.
And I'm sure that there was, you know, trust issues, maybe even trust issues amongst themselves. You know. So.
Well, I think about one of the proposed kind of context for the book of Romans is this idea that at a certain point before that, the Jews were kicked out of Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a certain period, they were allowed to come back.
Yeah.
And so the letter is kind of this, letter to the Gentile folks there, saying, look, like, you wouldn't be a church without these people who started this. You need to welcome them back in. You know, from the Jewish point of view, going back in, you know, they had already they'd just been exiled, you know, kicked out. I mean, I'm sure, you know, in most of those situations, if you had some property, someone else has that. Someone else has that now. You know, so I mean, it's kind of that same scenario, you know, where when you're asked to come back together with people who have mistreated you, you know, and continue to mistreat you, you know, just because you claim a certain thing doesn't make it all go away, make it all rosy.
What do you think of it? I mean, there's some significant differences between Mark 4 and Mark 6. What do you think of the difference that in Mark 4, Jesus was with them, and in Mark 6, he's not?
Right. Yeah, and I think to me it's building up this. It's saying something, building up in the community. You know, there's this increased level of absence, right? That's happening, and so you have to kind of. I think it's happening in the text itself, you know, just gently kind of preparing the way to say, look, there's going to come a time, you know, when I'm going to be, you know, beaten, crucified, and die, you know, rise again, but I won't be with you in this way, you know. So we have to, you know, start to get used to the idea that I'm going to have greater distance, you know. But I think that on the flip side, you know, for the community, that in both cases the story ends with the storm being calmed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, even though Jesus has kind of pushed them out on the boat to say, hey, you're going to be over here and I'm going to be over here, you know, but when I see you, I read this version here because I think they do such a good job of getting the language right about the. It says.
What version is that?
This is Joel Marcus's commentary. It's like,
okay.
And he does a translation within it,
Okay.
But
okay.
He says, and seeing them making torturous progress in their rowing, for the wind was against them. I think it gets to that idea that word is trying to say that something something serious is going on out in this boat, that they're facing some serious problems. And some people even say that word has resonances kind of with this idea of like a apocalyptic torments, so I think it's saying something to the community, to say, even as you're going through whatever you're going through, you have Jesus praying on the mountain, off in a distance, but then you
divine agency.
You have Jesus, then you have Jesus coming to them, and calming the storm. So I think, there's like a little bit of a. We have to learn that there's, that we will go through some things, and that we are not, it doesn't all work out exactly how we hope it would, but there's, I don't know. I think that's something's being said to the community, in that.
And I was looking at, in the store of the loaves, they say, how are we going to feed these people? And he tells them, you do it. And then in 6, he sends them out. So it's just like he's trying to train them to be on their own, to be independent.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like
and this verse ends with that. This verse ends. This little section ends with this strange. It says. He came up to them into the boat, and the wind died down. They were greatly amazed within themselves, for they did not understand about the loaves.
Oh, yeah.
But their heart was hardened.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think it's at the end of 3. At the end of chapter 3, I think it is where it talks about he couldn't do any healing in his hometown, and part of the reason was their hearts were hardened. So there's this kind of like there was the hardening of the hearts of kind of the religious folks, and now that hardening has settled in with the disciples as well. It's kind of a
that seems to be maybe a minor theme in the Gospel of Mark. That it almost puts a limit. It almost puts a limit on the divine ability to make a difference.
Right.
Or creates that tension.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because it's like you have to read the Gospel of Mark. Like you wouldn't want to have been there, like as he was dictating it, or you wouldn't want to have lived at the time of, like, you wouldn't have want to been a disciple at the time, the way that Mark writes the story.
No.
Right. So like coming afterwards, knowing that the resurrection happens, knowing that there's a community that Mark is addressed to, knowing that people continue the faith, knowing that people's hearts are somehow softened again, and they are able to live, as people of the faith, but Mark certainly seems to give every impression all the time that like the thing is doomed. Like, these people are not going to catch this. You know what I mean? I mean, because you had, like, even at the end, you have the centurion who says, truly this was the Son of God. But the women are afraid to speak, and we don't know what the guys are even doing.
Yeah.
Like it's just kind of this, you only have hope because you know that somehow this gospel still survived and it was written to someone. Like there was somebody there to
Yeah, so some community
it was some community that actually wanted it, needed it. But
yeah.
the way that Mark ends the story, you wouldn't be sure that that's the case. I mean, so that's what's really, and I think that's why you have to always kind of be reading it as, both the getting a picture of Jesus, but also listening for what Mark is trying to say to his community. Because he's trying to, I think he's trying to say, like, just like this story, he's trying to say overall that like things got dark, and things got hopeless.
Yeah.
And that's, and Jesus was gone, and we didn't know what was going to happen. But Jesus came back, but Jesus showed up, and Jesus continues to show up somehow in our lives and in the way that we live. I think that's, it's a very, realistic, very, very, keeps the feet on the ground, I think. For sure. Yeah.
And in both stories, I mean, clearly one of the themes of both stories, 4 and 6, that the divine is able to come and calm the storm of humans who are in the midst of deep turmoil and struggle.
Right. Yeah. I was looking at this. I was trying to look over my notes here to see. Oh, I was this quote from there's a book, say to this mountain, which is like a book about discipleship, uses the Gospel of Mark, and it says is there a more heartbreaking portrait of the struggle of discipleship, a struggle in which we so often seem to be losing ground against the storms of history? I think that's a good way to think about what this story is trying to say to us. I mean, especially, in one way, you think about all this stuff, all the, this variant and all these, all this coming back and asking people to mask up again. And just seeming like we're heading back to square one, with all that stuff. I mean, people are getting really, really desperate, And if they don't do something about these evictions, so many people, just one thing after another, it seems like, it's getting hard.
I think one of the things that's amazing about Mark and this whole story is that, he does a tremendous job of contrast, because in verse 52, the disciples, they don't understand nothing. But then in 53 on, he goes in the village and everybody's, come on in.
Exactly.
I mean, just a tremendous contrast between those who walk with him, don't understand who he is, but those who are complete strangers. I guess this is a Gentile community.
Yeah.
They understand,
or
I understand who he is. So it's just amazing contrast.
Yeah, and it's well, and it's a little bit about, it's a little bit there too about this idea of the loaves, right? I mean, that there is like this, whatever's available can be spread to, to as many people as are present, and so it's always, something's always available.
Something's always available.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point, and I think. Yeah, you have this. You have this kind of up and down. And I think it's one of those things, I mean, yeah, I mean, we struggle with this so much, I think, in the church. I mean, because so much of the energy and so much of the, the stuff that really is touching the ground that God is doing in the world so often is happening outside the church,
Yeah.
I mean, now the fact of the matter is that often, people have found some inspiration or some comfort within the church in order to do some of the things that they're doing, out in the world. But I think that we often, I mean, just like the disciples, we often miss so much of what's happening and what's possible.
Yeah.
We're always trying to make it fit, inside,
certain parameters. And I think, well, there's still, I think there's still some, we talk about hearts being hardened. There's still some resistance to the fact that that it ain't gonna be like it used to be.
Right.
After the pandemic. I think there's a lot of folk who want to go back and wishing for pre-pandemic church, but that's not going to happen.
Well, it's like well, it's like everything else. I mean, the pandemic has only really highlighted the things that were, because in reality, the way things wasn't working anyway. I mean, as far as like, bringing people in and the future of the church, you know what I mean? Like that, things were already going we were just maintaining better. This has kind of highlighted where the real, where the real gaps and where the real kind of problems were, and it's made it clearer, I think. And I mean, of course, we have an opportunity to respond in a way that actually would lead us not back to normal, but into a new place.
A new normal,
where we should have probably gone already, but maybe this is, pushing us in the right place.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's another part of this story, right? I mean, Jesus is saying, you've got to get on that boat.
Yeah,
you got to get,
And many of us are in the boat and we're still in the storm. We just don't want to deal with the fact of change.
Yeah. This is a little long, but this is another quote from the same guy, a different book, but he says, these harrowing sea stories intend to dramatize the difficulties facing the kingdom community as it tries to overcome the institutionalized social divisions between Jew and Gentile. Through this metaphorical action, the community struggles to make the passage to integration. Hence, the difficulty is always en route to the Gentile shore. The wind and the sea as obstacles derived from the ancient Semitic mythic personification of cosmic forces of chaos and destruction. It is no wonder the disciples demonstrate reluctance. All the power of the established symbolic universe of segregation opposes this journey. And no doubt the real-life social hostility to such a project of integration threatened to drown the community. But Mark insists that Jesus will rescue this project and silence the winds of opposition.
Mm. I'm sure the marketing community had a lot of preconceived notions about the folk that they were trying to reach out to, and that prejudice or misconceptions probably was a major major issue.
Well, and I think you also, I mean, it's I mean, in the certain timeline, it's a very like politically and socially dangerous time. I mean, there's there are people actually planning like revolts and or you've just had one, whatever, however you want to see it. But there's there's real threat of retribution.
Mhm.
There's sharp lines being drawn about, are you with us or are you against us? Like that,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's not a, it's a pretty serious time to be, trying to figure out how to go about things. And of course, I mean, almost every time there's a serious time like that, the worst person you can be often is the one who's trying to bring people together instead of instead of just choose a side.
I don't think that also some of the issues might be that there had to be some concern that there had to be some level of organization with this in this community,
right.
some type of structure. I mean, we're not talking about type of structure like we see in Timothy and Titus, but some type of structure. So I'm sure there was the issue of the challenge of, I guess it's still the issue of the layer of the Peruzzi that they're looking for to come back versus that we need structure.
Yeah. So. No, I think that's probably the one. That's probably the really, that's probably a real challenge of Mark, I think, is because I think at the time there's just enough ambiguity about where the church is going that it's not clear what it's going to look like, and if you're not going to be, if you're not going to be inside the synagogue, if you're not going to have that structure, and you're not going to be, just some kind of offshoot of some Roman, emperor cult or something like that. Like, if you're not going to be either one of those things, what are you going to be?
What is our identity?
Right.
They're struggling with a sense of who they are.
Right.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, and it's I think that's a tough one because it seems like Mark is really pushing them to open up and be and of course the opposite impulse is to say, okay, well, we can show hospitality, but like, where do we where do we draw the lines? How do we
because we, on one hand, we need to protect ourselves a little bit, to still feeling the trauma, like you talked about the expulsion and whatever, to still deal with that trauma and that pain. But and so wow, that's a lot of tension. Really, it's a lot of tension.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't think we ask ourselves a lot of questions, like, I was thinking about this when I did my some further study in the book of Revelation. I mean, a lot of people talk about, all those places that those letters were written to, in the beginning of that, of that letter, I guess you call it. I mean, there's not churches there anymore. I mean, they didn't make it. You know what I mean? And it's really not clear from like reading Paul's letters necessarily that he was successful in his arguments, to people. I mean, like it's kind of like, I mean, we know that we can, a certain tradition carries on, but like it's I mean, you wonder about Mark as well. Like, I mean, like, did it work? Did it even work? I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, there's still people running around and, obviously multiplied the people who call themselves Christians. But you can tell that, like, by some of the letters of the New Testament, they still would have been arguing with them about what they ended up, saying and doing. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
Tough one. Yeah, it's tough. That tension.
Yeah. This is real. This is I always like to bring some of this stuff from the community in Nicaragua who did their kind of Bible study together.
No.
And just kind of, it's interesting because it's, you know, a lot of peasants kind of, you know, in this community trying to make sense of these stories. And it talks about one of the women says the fact that he walked upon the water means that he had overcome the lake and calmed the storm, because he has a mysterious power. So maybe he'll overcome the storm we're having in Nicaragua. And then the guy says, and in this storm, he isn't a ghost, an illusion. He's really himself. And so we shouldn't be afraid. And then another guy says, then Ernesto, what we're shown here is that if we have faith in him, we can overcome this squall that we're now struggling with without any need for him to be present like he was for the disciples there on the water. We can overcome it if we all get together to struggle against the injustices that the poor are suffering. Because misery gets greater and greater, and goods get more and more expensive. And that, I imagine, is a storm for us. If we get together and agree, all of us, we're capable of overcoming that storm. Yeah. I just thought the way that they used the idea of faith as a way of tying them to, you know, to what Jesus is capable of doing, you know, without being physically present, you know, I just thought that was, I just thought that was powerful. The way that
is powerful.
The way this community in all of these, in all their readings of this can so easily bring it to their real world situation. You know, I think a lot of us in the church struggle with that move, to say, okay, this right here applies directly to this, you know, these things that are going on in my life, you know.
And I think that, you know, we talked about it earlier, that I think that in some ways we're in the Western church, we've just gotten so comfortable. We've just gotten so comfortable. That you know, we're just not, you know, it's not really deal with controversy or challenges or whatever. We're just too comfortable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and, you know, and it's hard because it's real, you know, I mean, we are geographically often very close to people who are going through serious storms, you know, like this. You know, we're not far from them necessarily. You know, most of us are only, you know, 10, 15 miles away at the most from people who are deep, you know, in this situation. And I know with your work, you probably encounter people going through these things all the time.
Yeah, I haven't never told you what I do. I work for the Office of Child Support Enforcement. And so I mean, so I got two diametrically opposed set of people. I have the person that's trying to get financial support for the children, and I got the person who owes that support. And they have their their struggles. And then of course my customers, they have their struggles. And the kind of cases I work interstate cases, which is even more challenging. I'm not dealing with somebody who's here in Virginia. I'm dealing with somebody in the other person's in North Carolina or in Texas or wherever. And so you've got those other states challenges. You know, so
goodness gracious.
And this pandemic has just exasperated these issues because most states were judicial. When the pandemic came, the court shut down. So really, child support throughout the country was paralyzed.
Wow.
It was paralyzed. And you know, and then there's the also issue that from what I can tell from working in child support now for over 25, 30 years, that there really don't states don't really put a lot of resources out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it be human resources for working cases or resources for, say, the other party, the person who doesn't have the children, so they can, overcome whatever barriers they have so they can work, so they can pay, or so child support's not sexy.
No.
Not sexy. So yeah. I saw there was a story on CNN today. It was about the whole eviction thing. I think it's a lady. She was in Vegas area, and she had sold all her stuff so she can pay her bills. She sold her kid's bed. She sold her laptop. So they talk about this eviction moratorium. The funds are available, but you got to be able to get documents together and upload documents. Well, if you ain't got no laptop, how do you go about doing that?
It's a craziness. It's a craziness. Yeah. No, I mean, and it's Yeah.
And I think one of the things this pandemic shows that we weren't prepared. I mean, when you look at the whole unemployment issue, that unemployment here in Virginia, the resources weren't there. Not just here, a lot of states for having people come so you can process those claims.
Right.
The resources, the structure was not in place.
Right.
We weren't ready for this thing.
Right.
So. And you think we would learn something for the next, but no, we still haven't learned nothing yet. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what this, that's what this text is talking about.
Especially at the end. I mean, because the end shows the tremendous need. I mean, they recognize, this is somebody that can help us, and there was tremendous need. So there's always a tremendous need.
I mean, and that was the story with the loaves too. The people just clamoring, trying to get, Well, and and from here we go. It's not too long before Jesus has the conflict with the Pharisees about the and the scribes about the law, and then there's the woman who comes. The Syrophoenician or Canaanite woman comes, and Jesus says some unkind things to her, but then then offers her some healing for her daughter. Then you have another feeding of the 4,000. So it's like the whole thing is bookended by this this incredible abundance that's out there. But in the midst, you have everybody, even Jesus himself at points, seeming to deny different people, access to it.
It's almost like Mark is building this drama where, on one hand, he's pushing the disciples to go out to reach out. Then he's also building the drama of this growing conflict between Jesus and the religious community. Right. That drama is just slowly building.
No, for sure. So I forgot I thought I would have had my calendar with me, but so I think let me see I'm going to see what the dates are coming up.
How's the church coming?
It's going all right. It's just it's busy. Busy trying to figure things out. But we have. I was just going to say that, like, next week and the week after that, we'll look at those kind of conflict stories in chapter 7. Yeah, and then on the 23rd, we're going to look at that story of the Syrophoenician woman. And I don't know. Have you ever met Marcy Wright?
No.
She was at seminary for a while. So she interned at church with me at Fairfield. Okay. But she's going to come on too and talk about to help us go through that story. So
Syrophoenician woman. Okay.
Yeah, that's going to be good.
Okay.
and then who knows what. And then I think after that, I'm going to try to hit the texts that that will be the lectionary text for the next week.
Okay.
So like whatever those texts are in Mark that are coming up for the next Sunday, to look at those. Because some of those times I preach on them, so give me a little chance to get some work done beforehand.
Yeah.
And then hopefully after August is over, we'll get.
Right. In the Presbyterian Church, are you pretty much bound to the lectionary in terms of that's the text you definitely have to preach from?
Not necessarily. It's just that it does make it easier sometimes because there's so many resources available for the lectionary text. There's so much help around, so it makes it a little easier. I'm going to be going actually in October. It's pretty cool. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I'm going to try this out in October. They're doing this around here. They have this tour that they do of this county of people that used to put. Well, they still have them up. These quilts that they hung on their barns as part of the Underground Railroad.
Okay.
Like you would see a quilt, and it would have a symbol on it, and that would tell you something about whether this place was a safe place or maybe go this way or whatever. And so they're going to have this. They do this tour every year, and then they're going to take. We have a set of those quilts in our church.
Okay.
They're going to put them in some downtown shops.
Okay.
But then we're also going to kind of highlight and try to do some tours of the site where Underground Railroad went through our church. Okay. And for that month, I'm going to do sermons on the different symbols in the quilts, like the different symbols, and relate them to biblical texts. Okay. So for those that'll be totally off. That'll be totally off.
You record your sermons?
I mean, they do the live stream or whatever, so they must be on YouTube somewhere.
They're probably on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear some of those.
I'll send you the link. Don't listen to last week's.
Okay.
I don't know. I was struggling last week. I don't know what happened. I was treading water up there. Okay. But yeah, I'll send you a link sometime.
Okay.
Maybe when I get back. I've been doing Ephesians since July, since I got here.
That's the lectionary?
Yeah.
Okay.
But when I get, I think in early September, I'll do a couple Mark texts. When I go back to the Mark text, I'll send you a link. You can,
okay.
We'll have covered them, so you'll.
Okay, that'd be interesting. Yeah. I'd like to hear that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you had some thoughts to marinate on. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully. There'll be no excuse.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be all right. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, maybe in September Leonard will be rested up. We'll get him back.
Yeah, get him back. Yeah.
And I've been thinking about. I'm gonna try to get some. I got some other folks I've been meaning to. That I know have favorite texts.
Okay.
To get into. So yeah. Okay. Good. Well, I hope you have a good week.
You too, Darren, and I'll be talking to you.
Yeah, sounds good. All right.
I'll see you next week. Okay. Yeah. All right.